Hi everyone. So today I'm going to talk to you on how to harden your system so you can have a better confidentiality, ensure data integrity and availability of your data and your NAS in general. So of course, let's start with user security. That's the first step that I've already explained that you have to take care of at first. So first thing to do is to disable the guest account. If you don't need it, just disable it. For the administrator account, so the built-in one, you have to change the password, to activate the two-factor authentication, and then to disable it. Of course, before you do that, you have to create another administrator account. Now, in terms of user accounts, so standard users, just enforce complex passwords, enforce password changes. So, after certain days, after the admin has resetted the password or maybe has created a new user, always reset the password. If possible, the administrator should maybe not send the password by email to the user. I know that when you create a user on Synology, you can send the password by email, in a welcome mail. Just don't do it. Just don't send it. And of course, enforce two-factor authentication if possible. Also use the auto block and account protection. I must insist those features are not the same. They are not doing the same thing. They do not have the same result. So don't forget to activate it here, the auto block and the account protection. So it's the control panel, security and account. Just don't forget to configure this. Then that's for user security. Now, in terms of file and application security, first of all, if you don't want to have too much to do in terms of permissions, it might be better to use groups to apply the permissions on instead of individual users. If you do this if you apply permissions on individual users, you might make some mistakes, you might forget something, and if you have a lot of users, it's a lot of configuration to do, so prefer to have groups, so it's easier. This should apply for folders and file access, of course, but also for application. If a user don't give the permission. So this is the second line. It's user need to know or need to use approach. If someone does not need to access a folder, just don't give him the access. Although maybe it's no confidential data or anything, just don't give him the right. In another video, I've explained Synology folder encryption. So just choose the correct function, as there are two, and just use it. You never know, just use it. Of course, it is maybe also later in the slide. Always encrypt the backups, encrypt the computers in case of offline sync. Look, if you have a Synology Drive or Synology Cloud application that is locally syncing your file, then if you can also apply with BitLocker for Windows or File Vault for Mac, always apply. Also use the red with my mirroring function. Don't use a red 0, for example, because it's great for performance, but if you lose one drive, you will lose everything. So if you have a 2-bay NAS, well, just do the red 1 red type. Always configure local backups. So for example, with a USB drive, always do also some remote backups online. So if you can, like in Amazon, in on another NAS, and also offline backups and snapshots. So offline backups is more that, you know, you have a drive that is stored safely in another location, and like once a week you go with the drive at work or at home, for example, and you plug it in and you do the backup. This is very important because the only way and best way to protect yourself against ransomwares, it's, well, by using offline backups and also snapshots. Those two features are very good. You have to configure them for you to have a better protection. So for the backups, for example, if I can show you on Synology, so this is not important, this warning, it's normal. So I have a backup that is, my USB disk is always connected to the NAS, so it's doing every day some backups. I don't need to care about it. And I have some other backups which did not run for a week now. So I just take my external hard disk at work and I put it at home. I just plug it in. I wait for the backup to start automatically and to finish. And when the backup is finished, it ejects the drive automatically. So if you do not have two external drives to do this, for example, what you can do is every time it makes a backup, it ejects the drive. So this is the only protection that you will get against ransomware. It's only this one. Also, you should configure recycle bins. So for example, if you go to the, let's say, where is it? If you go to a folder, for example, you have the possibility to configure a recycle bin. It can be good to use it. So if someone maybe erases a file or folder, for example, you can recover it. So you can choose to restrict the access to administrators only. That's a choice. Do as you want. It's not it's not really important if you don't if you're at home, for example. Then what we've got the configure versioning with drive. So if we go to the drive, well, in the team folder, for example, say you have the folders, you should enable the versioning. I've put 7 versions, that's way enough. I prefer to use the earliest versions, not the IntelliVersioning, because it chooses automatically which version to keep or not, and I prefer to have, I don't like this approach. If you want, you can rotate the versions regularly. So if some versions are too old, then they will get deleted automatically. I prefer not to apply this feature. That's not really for security reasons, but just my personal approach. I prefer not to have it. Then what do you have? Okay, so we've talked about encryption. If you do not need, it's better to hide the folders from my network places and hide the subfolders and files from users without restriction. And this, you will find it also on the shared folder settings here. So if you don't need to show, just don't show. And if you want also for better security, you can disable the hard disk write cache. So if you have a standard hard disk drive, it has a cache when it wants to write, and it's good for better performance. But if you have if your NAS is unstable, or maybe the electric grid at home is unstable, or I don't know what, it's better to disable the write cache so you don't lose, maybe you reduce the risk of data compromission and operating system failures if you deactivate this function. And this, you can find it in the where is it already? In the storage manager. You can go on your drives, you click on your drive, and then you can action configure, and then you can enable or disable write cache. So I prefer to take it off. I don't have performance problem now, so I prefer to take it off. Now, for the next steps, for the system security, please use the Synology Security Advisor so you can scan for any kind of insecure settings. So if you go to the, I have it right there. So there is a list, for example, of all what was scanned. I do this once a day. So if I have anything special that maybe a configuration has changed, we never know. And just to be sure that my system is always safe. And normally the result is sent by mail to me every day. I usually don't review it, but everything is there. So for example, it asks you to disable the TFTP service, for example. It checks if you have users with weak password, Telnet, if it's disabled or not, auto block and everything, a lot of good stuff. Now something very nice is also to check automatically if you have, if you have your packages that are up to date, if you're using the latest version of the system. And I think that there is another thing, so you have the guest account, if it's disabled or not. And this, I find this quite interesting. If you have any kind of cryptocurrency mining malware on your system, it will scan for it, and that's good. Same for the malicious startup scripts. I found this very nice to have this feature on the NAS, so it can find for this kind of bad stuff. So that's very good. I do appreciate it. So as I said, also keep your system and application up to date. So for the system, it will be in the control panel, and for the packages, it will be into the packages app. Also use the built-in firewall. So the built-in firewall is only to restrict inbound traffic. It does not filter outbound traffic. So something missing, but for most of the people it's not important, but for me it is, and I will explain why. And also, if you can, if I remember well, you have the country restriction, which is quite interesting. So you can go to the control panel. You can then go to the, I think that you have a firewall. Now, where is it? Where is it? Oh, I'm getting old or what? I forgot. I think in security, you've got the firewall, and you can edit the rules, and here you can apply a lot of things. So I've only opened what needs to be done for my NAS to work properly. So as you can see, I'm using the secure architecture that I have shown you on another video. So of course it only waits for a special IP, source IP, which is my secure device, my UTM. So that's why I mostly have this one. Those other rules is for other special services, and also for this one for IMAP, POP3 and everything. That's a bit different. I'm not going to enter into the details here. So you can create a rule. So you can select from either all ports from a built-in application if you want. So there is a lot of stuff here. There is also a custom list, which I usually use. And from the source IP, you have all specific IP and location. So location, here you can select the country if you would like to restrict access. So for example, if you're in Switzerland, your system is Switzerland, and you have no reason that people access your system other than from Switzerland, and just only authorize Switzerland, for example. And then you can choose action, the allow or deny. So for example, I have my last rule, just we never know, that denies everything. So this is something that you can do too. Use also the built-in antivirus. So there are two. There are one that is free, which is called, I think, Antivirus. And there is a paid one, which is McAfee. So I choose McAfee. I don't remember why. I think that they have both the same features. So I think it's only with signatures anyway. So it's a basic, very basic antivirus, but it's still nice to have it. So I think I've got automatic updates, and they're updated every time I would like to scan. So this is what I've done. I'm scanning every Sunday. I'm doing a system scan, so it's not scanning my files and folders. This can take a lot of time because I have 3 terabytes of data, but also you can, if you want, to choose specific folders, especially if you have folders with a lot of in and out traffic. If you have, you know, your NAS that is accessible from the internet, where you allow people to drop files, it can be nice to configure folder scan if you want. And then you've got all the logs which had the results. So you see, for a system scan, if I take, I think, this one, so no, not really this one, update started. No, this is only the updates. So here it is. Okay, so it starts with the update. It scans the system, and you see it only took 8 minutes. So even this kind of scan, you can do it every day. I would do it every day. I had a problem with my NAS in terms of performance a few months ago for almost 1.5 years. So that was a lot, but I solved the problem of performance, but I did not change the settings. So here you can do the use the antivirus, which is highly recommended anyway. Now, use a compatible UPS. So if maybe you have a grid that is not good enough, use a Synology compatible UPS. Why? Because when it's compatible, the UPS can send the NAS a shutdown signal, so it can shut down safely without you you have less risks of losing your files. So what happens, if I remember well, in the control panel you have the you have the hardware and power. I think that you can see here the UPS setting. You can see I can enable UPS support, and I've said that until I have the low battery for the UPS light coming on, only then it will start the shutdown process. And I think that I can have the device information. If you are ever interested for an example of compatible NAS, it is a back UPS ES550G. This one works very well. So I've tested it, and it shuts down my system gracefully. So this is important to keep in mind. One that is compatible. Always schedule smart tests, so you can assure yourself that the disks are in a good health, in a good shape. So if you go to the storage manager, you can go to HDD, and then you have the task scheduler, and you see I have 2 of them. I think I do the quick one once a week, and the big one once a month. I think that for I've got 2 times 6 terabytes in a RAID 1 configuration. I think I don't remember exactly how many hours it takes. I don't know if it's like 10 hours or even more, but anyway, it does not put too much load on the system, so I just let it run, so I'm sure that everything works well. Use also the data scrubbing. So the data scrubbing is a very important function that you can schedule to into the storage pool. You can have you can set the schedule. So the schedule allows you to automatically run the scan, and also you can at what time you would like to launch the scan, and if you want it to stop. For example, during the business hours you can stop it, and when business hours are over you can continue it. That is very important, because the more and more you put stuff and you delete stuff and everything, in case of power failures you have a higher risk of data corruption. So this is supposed to scrub everything and put everything in place. So in case you have a crash, you have less risks. So always do this. For 3 terabytes of data, it takes, I think, 6 hours to complete, between 4 and 6 hours to complete. So I just do it overnight and it works very, very well. So that's for the data scrubbing. You should also run the disk defrag function if you can. So this is not, you cannot schedule this one. I did not find any settings for that, but here you can just enter the file system defragmentation. So I think that if you shut down between the file system defragmentation and the data scrubbing, I think that it starts over again completely. There is normally no risks of rebooting while those procedures are going on. This is no risk. The only time that you should never ever restart a NAS, it's while it's doing the red resynchronization when your system crashes. That's the only time never to reboot. Never reboot your system. You never know. Okay, then what do we got? I've also mentioned the storage analyzer reports. That's more of a surveillance function for you. You can see, if I find it, where is it? Let's open it again. The storage analyzer is here to allow you to see how the volume usage is going on. So you see I've got 56% of data of storage space used, and in this graph I didn't have a lot of things that changed, but when you have a lot of data coming in and going out, so the space, it changes how much space you've got on your system. You can see, the graph, which is for me a good function. As you can see, I have I have the file count, I have the size, so you can see a lot of things on the report, and you can also go into the folders itself and see, for example, okay, I have all this, it takes all that, etc., etc. So that's a very interesting function. I would not, where is it? I don't remember where is it. There is a feature that I would not use. I think it's the find duplicate files when generating report. I think that this takes some resources to do that, so I did not configure it. And as you can see, it's daily at 5 o'clock, at 5 a.m. It only takes like 5 or 10 minutes, or I think even less. So that's a nice to have function. So you can maybe prepare yourself if maybe you need some more space, because in the last month suddenly you are using more and more data. So it allows you to plan the future, but also detect maybe some suspicious activity where suddenly from nowhere a lot of data is being written on the disk, and maybe it's not that easy to see. At least here you can have a better view of what's happening. Now, for network security, any default ports that you might have that could be system-based or application-based, always change the default. So for the DSM access, for the file station, audio station, video station, node station, telnet, SSH, all of those kind of also administration services, so SSH, telnet, and everything, change the default ports. And that you can do, if I remember correctly, in the control panel you have the terminal, I think, and there you can choose some other ports, and you can also have a stronger security in terms of compatibility, so you are sure that you are negotiating the best encryption protocol. So me, I put high because I do not use any old clients that the settings would not work, for example. So use as you can see, the telnet service is deactivated. This is a big no, do not use telnet. Then disable any unused or unsafe, sorry for the mistake, or unsafe services and protocols. So for example, telnet, it's unsafe, it's old-fashioned, just don't use it at all. Just disable it like I showed you. Now there are some other kind of services. Where are those? It's more for the file services, for example. As you can see, I'm not using any kind of services. I'm not using SMB, AFP, or NFS. I'm only using the drive application, which works on a secure port of 6690. So again, if you use the enable SMB services, if you can use SMB v3 only. Those protocols, the three that I've shown you or that I'm showing you now, never use them on the internet, never expose them on the internet, either voluntarily because you want it, or maybe because you chose a bad configuration and those services are accessible from outside. Anyway, only use the secure version of those protocols, so SMB v3. Transport encryption, you can force it if you want. And for the other settings, I did not dive into those settings, so I will not go further. But here you have the SMB settings. Now you can have also the AFP setting. It's also, well, there is nothing much in terms of permissions or safety. And you have the NFS. The NFS v4, I'm going to check, but I'm not sure that it takes encryption. This I don't remember. I don't remember if the 4 is compatible with encryption. Okay, so all those kind of services, if you don't need them, take them off. If you need them, choose the secure versions, and of course always enable the logs. FTP, I don't need use it either. Anyway, FTP, never use FTP, never. It's not encrypted. FTPS is the encrypted version, but nowadays who uses FTP or FTPS? They are outdated protocols in the way they are, functioning. So don't use FTP nor FTPS. It's more of a hassle network-wise and to be compatible with some other clients. So don't use FTPS. Prefer SFTP. And of course, if you can, change the port number. And here you can have some kind of speed limits. This I don't care. TFTP, if I remember well, it's also an encrypted protocol. It works over UDP, so don't use it. It's very rare that you need the TFTP protocol. Maybe if you need to search some firmware from if a Cisco device needs maybe to find a a firmware on the NAS, maybe. Otherwise don't use the TFTP. The rsync, if you need to sync over maybe the internet or inside, if you want, you can use the rsync protocol. Also change the default ports if you can. And for the file fast clone, I'm not using that. And the bonjour service, if you don't need it, don't use it. SSDP, if you don't need it, don't use it. And WS discovery, if you don't need it, don't use it. Okay, so those are the services that you can disable if you don't need them. Okay, so now disallow. Only use the secure version of protocols. So as you know, you've got HTTPS, you've got SMB v3. And for example, you have also the so you had the SSH and everything, and you have the WebDAV over HTTPS. So if you need to, for example, access a drive remotely, maybe inside the company or at home, you use SMB. If you want, you can use the WebDAV over HTTPS. Always use HTTPS because if you use the WebDAV, the default client on Windows 10, I think it's basic authentication. It's not MD5, for example. So so if you're not using HTTPS, it will send your data in your information, clear text, and of course that's not the way to go. Disallow any kind of unauthenticated services. I think TFTP, I don't remember if TFTP you have some kind of accounts to use in order to access the service, but if there is any kind of anonymous services, don't use them. Do not use quick connect with relay mode. Do not use it. I will go into that into another video. But if you can, prefer a DDNS service like I've explained in another video. Do not use VPN on the NAS directly, so prefer another device, maybe your home router or a UTM. Use a trusted certificate for Let's Encrypt and use the DDoS protection. So for the Let's Encrypt, it works extremely well for me. I'm using maybe 7 or 8 different domains with the DDNS service. So I have, if I have a video station, I will have, for example, video something dot something. If I have photo station, I have photo something dot something, and like this, I have a lot of certificates. But what is nice, which is good, is that for the certificates, for this certificate, you can have here you can have how can I say, certificates, different domains in common names into one certificate. So you see, I have I'm using like 10 domains, but I only have one certificate, which is extremely practical. So that is for the certificate part. I will maybe make a video about it later. Now, what else? So use DDoS protection. I think it was into the security tab. I think in the protection you have the DDoS protection. This I'm not really sure how it works, because on the Synology documentation it only talks about ICMP packets. If there are too much of them, it will not answer. But I don't see really the point. So I hope that it's also, network based. If someone tries to open too many ports on your too many sessions on your NAS, I hope that it will cut them. I hope it works like that. And last thing that I forgot to show you, of course, because you've seen it, it's more, so in the advanced tab, I will go into this after. So it's the security tab. Enhance browser compatibility by skipping IP checking. I'm not behind a proxy server that could pose a problem, so I'm not using this function. Everything that is compatibility based, usually it has a security drawback, so I'm not using it. Improve protection against cross-site request forgery attack. So this is quite practical, because if you are logged into your NAS and you visit a compromised website, so someone is usually targeting you in that case because you are using a phishing link or I don't know what, then it might take action against your NAS. So if you have a lot of privileges, it can do a lot of things. Usually it's not to steal data, it's more to engage action on your NAS. So maybe create a user, disable a user, deleting data, for example, this kind of things. Usually it's a one-way attack. Usually. Improve security with the HTTP content security policy header. So yes, of course, do use that, because it allows you also to protect yourself against cross-site scripting attacks. So you are sure that usually people, they cannot compromise your system and then execute code onto your browser, which can have devastating effects. So of course, use the CSP. I'm not allowing the DSM to be embedded with iframe, because I don't embed my NAS into some other sites. And also it allows you to protect yourself from clickjacking attacks. So if you don't need iframe, don't use it. Protect yourself. Now, clear all saved user login sessions upon system restart. Yes, that's a good feature. It's a nice to have feature. So yes, I would activate it. And for the last one, I don't really see, it's just a notification when the current IP changes. So I think that if I log myself onto the NAS, and if someone else with the same account connects itself, I don't know if it's at the same time or after you, and then you are getting back, you might have a warning saying that you have accessed from another IP. I think that's I don't remember, it happened once or twice. And then you have the trusted proxy. So the trusted proxy, it's very important, because if you are using a reverse proxy, so a web application firewall like me, if you do not put the address of your reverse proxy, you will not see which IP is connecting to your NAS. You will just see the IP of the reverse proxy, but this, you don't want this, you don't care. What you want to see is which IP from the internet is connecting to you, not the reverse proxy. This you do not care. And for the last thing, it's more in terms of logging and monitoring. So every protocols, every application that has the logging function, just activate it. And if you can also send all those kind of logging into a separate device over the network, for example, so in case of problem, you can also have some kind of a trail or a trace, you know, in another system. So always, you know, externalize your logs instead. I mean, in addition, sorry, not instead. And for the last thing, I guess we have covered a lot of things now in this video. For the last thing, it's, well, the secure architecture I've talked to you about in one of the first videos. If you can, of course, well, use a secure device like a UTM, for example, Sophos, pfSense, if you have Fortinet also, but this is not free, the Fortinet. So put the NAS in its own LAN, filter ingoing and outgoing traffic with the network firewall, use the VPN on this, on this box if you can. Always use a network intrusion prevention system. This has saved me a lot, because I always see someone trying to send some malicious packets. So at least with this, it blocks them. Use the web control. Why? Because you can consider your NAS, like a server. So unless you are using a P2P program on your NAS, it does not need to access external websites. It only just to access the Synology website, spam lists if you are using the mail application, on which you can also activate the antivirus and anti-spam. What was I saying? So yes, you can limit the sites that the system is authorized to connect. Use the application control, for example. It allows to, a network firewall is a little bit, it's basic. It will only allows you to filter traffics with source, destination, so IP addresses and ports. So it's very basic. At least with application control, the security system will be able to see what kind of application the NAS is trying to access, for example. So it will analyze the headers and the content of the packets to determine if it's an application maybe good or bad. So this I can go into further in another video. For the network, you can also use a network antivirus, which I'm using myself. So any files that is transferred from any kind of clients except the drive application, everything is scanned for malicious files. So this is very good. So I know that every time that someone puts something, it gets scanned. Of course, it's not a bulletproof security, but you add up some layers of complexity for an attacker. And of course, use the web application firewall. It will be able to see for any kinds of SQL injections, XSS attacks, and oh my god, a lot of things that I don't have in mind right now. So I guess that if I just make a little tour again, I think that we have covered most of the topics here. Maybe I have missed something, but it's already a lot of work, especially if you choose the secure architecture, which is great. Really great. I would highly recommend you. And if you ever decide if you need to use, for example, a Sophos UTM license, which is free for home users, and you are maybe a little bit geeky, if you need any help, for example, or advice, I would gladly provide advices to you, because it's a lot of things to configure, and I have discovered a lot of problems while doing it, of course. But anyway, if I can put my experience on your profit, you know, that's good. I would gladly do it. And I think that is all of it. So, oh yeah, there was the advanced here, the TLS. Do not enable the HTTP compression. Some attacks can go through this, so don't use it. In terms of TLS SSL profile, only use modern compatibility, and you can choose also some custom settings inside. So here you have a lot of the application, what kind of profiles you would like to use, and you can have modern. I thought that if you have I thought there was a list. Now I don't remember, and that's strange. Something is missing here. I don't remember. You could choose. I thought you could use some how do you say, some special configuration. Maybe it's only for SSH. Maybe it's not here. And the kernel page table isolation, you know, with all the attacks that we had last year with the CPUs. Now I don't remember the attacks. I did not use it because I had some instabilities, so I did not use it. And I guess that's all. So if you enjoyed the video, well, maybe put a like and comment and subscribe. And if you have any kind of questions, feel free to ask. I would gladly answer them. Bye bye.